Assalamu Alaikum wa Rahmatullahi wa Barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters. Today, we delve into a pivotal moment in the early days of Islam, when the message of the oneness of Allah, previously shared in secrecy, was boldly proclaimed in public. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, driven by divine command, began to openly challenge the deeply ingrained idolatry of Makkah. This marked the beginning of a fierce confrontation with the Quraysh, who were determined to protect their way of life and the power structures that supported it. Proclaiming the truth, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, continued to spread the message of Islam until the following verse was revealed, signaling a new phase of his mission. Therefore, proclaim openly Allah's message, Islamic monotheism, that which you are commanded, and turn away from al-mushrikun, polytheists. Surah Al-Hijr 15:94. With this command, the Prophet, peace be upon him, began to openly discredit the superstitious practices of idolatry, exposing its futility and the emptiness of the idols that were worshipped in Makkah. He presented clear and logical arguments, demonstrating that idolatry, whether taken as a direct form of worship or as an intermediary to Allah, was nothing but manifest falsehood. The reaction of the Makkans. The reaction from the Makkans was immediate and intense. The words of the Prophet, peace be upon him, struck like a thunderbolt, shaking the very foundations of their time-honored traditions and belief systems. They could not tolerate the idea of being labeled as misguided people, especially by someone from their own ranks. The message of Islam posed a direct threat to their social, economic, and religious dominance. The Quraysh leaders quickly realized that this new call, if left unchecked, would undermine their authority, disrupt the established order, and strip them of their self-proclaimed supremacy. They understood that the acceptance of Islam meant complete submission to Allah and His Messenger, leaving no room for their control over the people and their wealth. It also meant that their lives of indulgence, oppression, and injustice would have to be abandoned. They could not accept such a radical shift, not because of any noble principles, but simply because it threatened their sinful way of life. Nay, man denies resurrection and reckoning, so he desires to continue committing sins. Surah Al-Qiyamah 75:5. Despite the clear truth of the message, the Quraysh were baffled. They could not refute the honesty, integrity, and impeccable character of Muhammad, peace be upon him, a man who was the epitome of good manners and human values. Faced with this dilemma, they decided to confront his uncle, Abu Talib, hoping to pressure him into silencing his nephew. The Quraysh appealed to Abu Talib. The Quraysh leaders approached Abu Talib, appealing to his sense of ancestral pride, a cornerstone of Arabian life. They said to him, "O Abu Talib, your nephew curses our gods, finds faults with our way of life, mocks at our religion, and degrades our forefathers. Either you must stop him, or you must let us get at him. For you are in the same opposition as we are in opposition to him, and we will rid you of him." Abu Talib, however, tried to placate them with a polite response, yet he did not take any action to stop the Prophet, peace be upon him. The Prophet, undeterred, continued to preach the message of Allah, undaunted by the increasingly desperate attempts of the Quraysh to stop him. The Quraysh's strategy to undermine the Prophet. As the time for the pilgrimage season approached, the Quraysh leaders grew increasingly anxious. They knew that the Arab delegates from various tribes would soon arrive in Makkah, and they feared that the Prophet's message would reach them. To prevent this, they devised a strategy to discredit him in the eyes of the pilgrims. They convened a meeting with Al-Walid bin al-Mughira, a respected elder, to decide on a unified narrative to use against Muhammad, peace be upon him. However, they could not agree on how to describe him. Some suggested calling him a soothsayer, kahin, but this was dismissed because his speech was not rhymed like that of a soothsayer. Others proposed labeling him as possessed by jinn, majnun, but this too was rejected, as his words and actions bore no signs of madness. They considered calling him a poet, but his words were unlike any poetry they had ever known. Finally, they suggested accusing him of practicing witchcraft. Al-Walid hesitated, acknowledging the sweetness and profound nature of the Prophet's words. However, he ultimately agreed that branding him as a magician, who could alienate families and create discord, was the most plausible accusation. The Quraysh adopted this narrative and spread it among the pilgrims and the people of Makkah. The Quran's response? In response to this plot, Allah revealed verses condemning the scheming of Al-Walid and the others who sought to undermine the Prophet, peace be upon him. Verily, he thought and plotted, So let him be cursed. How he plotted. And once more let him be cursed. How he plotted. Then he thought. Then he frowned, and he looked in a bad-tempered way. Then he turned back and was proud. Then he said, "This is nothing but magic from that of old. This is nothing but the word of a human being." Surah Al-Mudaththir, 74, 18, 25. The most vehement opponent of Islam was Abu Lahab, who would follow the Prophet, peace be upon him, wherever he went, shouting to the people, "Do not listen to him, for he is a liar." Despite these efforts, the Prophet, peace be upon him, managed to stir the hearts of a few, convincing them of the truth of his message.